lineup of Explorers, Fusions, and Escapes, there's a new vehicle that refuses to blend in. Its shape is long and low, its roof flat and unyielding, with deep grooves along the sides that give it a character all its own. At the back, bold letters spell out FLEX, demanding. Attention, this is the Ford Flex, a car that looked nothing like anything else on the road. Some people saw it and immediately dismissed it as ugly. Others couldn't look away, captivated by its unusual, almost futuristic design. It was part station wagon, part SUV, and entirely its own creation. From the start, the Flex was a gamble. Ford was trying something new, a vehicle that could replace the dying minivan, appeal to families, and stand out in a market that increasingly valued bold design over practicality. But it wasn't designed to be safe or conventional. Every line, every groove, every detail was deliberate. Ford wanted to create a car that people would remember. The timing, however, was brutal. The Flex launched right as the economy was collapsing, gas prices were skyrocketing, and Americans were cautious about big purchases. In other words, the world wasn't ready for a car this bold, this unapologetic, this different. Yet despite its rough start, the Flex began carving out a following. People who bought it weren't just looking for a family car. They wanted something unique. They wanted a vehicle with personality, with a design that made a statement without saying a word. Over time, the Flex earned the loyalty of owners who loved it for what it was: unconventional, practical, and surprisingly fun. The story of the Ford Flex isn't about easy wins or mainstream success. It's about a car that dared to defy expectations, that challenged what a family vehicle could be. It's about the risk Ford took when it built a car that refused to be invisible, and it's about the lasting impression that even an underdog vehicle can leave on the people who truly appreciate it. In this video, we'll dive deep into the full story of the Flex. We'll explore where the idea came from, what inspired its unusual design, and why Ford believed it could succeed. Where minivans and traditional SUVs were failing. We'll look at its features, from the EcoBoost engine that made it surprisingly quick to the roomy interior designed for family road trips. We'll examine its reception in the market, the struggles it faced, and the loyal cult following it built despite low sales. The Ford Flex was more than just a family car. It was a statement. It was bold, it was unusual, and it was unforgettable. Whether you loved it or hated it, you couldn't ignore it. And even years after production ended, it continues to spark conversation among car enthusiasts and families alike. This is the story of the Ford Flex, the boxy, bold, and endlessly fascinating car that proved that standing out can sometimes be more important than fitting in the background. To understand the Flex, we need to rewind to the late 1990s and early 2000s. Back then, Ford had a big problem. Its family vehicles were losing ground fast. For decades, American families had relied on minivans. The Ford Aerostar in the 1980s, followed by the Windstar in the 1990s, had done decent business. But by the early 2000s, things were falling apart. The minivan was becoming uncool. Parents didn't want to be seen in a big, rounded box with sliding doors anymore. It screamed soccer practice and suburban chore. Families wanted something with more style. Ford tried to update the formula with the Freestar, but it was a disaster. Sales were terrible. By 2006, Ford pulled the plug on its minivans completely. At the same time, their big SUVs like the Expedition and Excursion were going out of style. Gas prices were climbing, and buyers no longer wanted 12 miles per gallon from a giant truck-based SUV. Meanwhile, competitors were eating Ford's lunch. Honda Pilot launched in 2002 and became an instant family favorite. Toyota Highlander was practical, efficient, and reliable. Chevy Traverse and Saturn Outlook entered the market with big three-row crossovers. Ford looked around and realized minivans, dead. Gas-guzzling SUVs, declining. Crossovers, exploding in popularity. So here was the billion-dollar question inside Ford. How do we build a family car that's not a minivan, not a truck, but still works for big families? The answer was going to require bold thinking, and that's when the designers came up with something completely unexpected. In 2005, at the Detroit Auto Show, Ford revealed the Fairlane concept. It was long, it was square, it was flat, and it looked nothing like a Honda Pilot or Toyota Highlander. Instead, it looked like a modern station wagon with futuristic touches. The name Fairlane came from Henry Ford's Fairlane estate in Dearborn, Michigan. The design team wanted to connect it with heritage but give it a forward-looking twist. People were stunned. Some critics mocked it as a rolling brick. Others thought it was stylish, almost like something you'd see in Europe. But whether you loved it or hated it, you talked about it, and Ford executives noticed. In a car market full of copycats, they had something that sparked conversation. So the decision was made. We're building it. This is our new family car. The production version would arrive 3 years later, in 2008, and its new name would be the Flex. The launch, wrong car, wrong time. The year was 2008, a year that most automakers would rather forget. The global economy was unraveling at a terrifying pace. Banks were collapsing. Wall Street was in panic. And consumer confidence hit rock bottom. For millions of families, buying a new car was no longer a priority. Survival was. To make matters worse, gas prices in the United States soared to record levels, crossing $4 a gallon in many states. This combination of economic meltdown and fuel price shock created one of the harshest environments for selling cars in modern history. And right in the middle of this storm, Ford Motor Company was preparing to launch a brand new vehicle, the Ford Flex, a bold gamble. The Flex wasn't just another model in Ford's lineup, it was the product of years of design, development, and investment. Ford envisioned it as a stylish, modern family hauler that could bridge the gap between SUVs and minivans. It had 3 rows, plenty of space, and a design philosophy that leaned more toward urban sophistication than rugged off-road adventure. But there was a catch. The market conditions could not have been worse. Consumers who once might have considered something unique or premium were suddenly downsizing. Compact cars like the Toyota Corolla, Honda Civic, and Ford Focus saw renewed interest as buyers scrambled to save money on gas. Meanwhile, large, quirky, fuel-hungry vehicles suddenly looked like luxuries few could justify. Ford, however, had no choice. The Flex had been in development for years. Millions had already been spent on design and engineering. Production was ready to go. To cancel the launch would mean throwing away all that investment. So, despite the chaos in the market, Ford pushed forward a design that divided. When the Flex finally rolled into dealerships, it immediately made an impression. This was no ordinary family car. Its long, low, boxy profile looked unlike anything else on the road. The Flex was bold, polarizing, and deliberately different. Horizontal grooves along the sides gave it a retro-modern vibe. Its two-tone roof and squared-off proportions stood out in parking lots filled with rounded crossovers and anonymous sedans. For automotive journalists, the Flex was a breath of fresh air. Publications praised Ford for daring to be different. Car and Driver famously noted that the Flex had a personality all its own. Some even compared it to luxury wagons from Europe, praising its premium interior, appointments, and smooth driving dynamics. But what the critics loved, average buyers didn't always understand. Many people shopping for family vehicles wasn't looking for something that screamed individuality. They wanted safe, reliable, and familiar. To them, the Flex looked unusual, too unusual. For families who wanted to blend in, the Flex stood out like a sore thumb. The price problem. Then came the issue of money. In 2008, Ford priced the Flex starting around $28,000. Higher trims, like the Limited with all the bells and whistles, pushed past $40,000. Under normal circumstances, those numbers might have been acceptable. But during a financial Crisis, they were deal breakers. Consider the competition. Toyota's Highlander and Honda's Pilot were both well-established, trusted family SUVs, selling in huge numbers despite the tough market. In 2009, the Highlander moved over 100,000 units, while the Pilot sold more than 85,000. By comparison, the Flex's first full year resulted in sales of just 38,000, a fraction of its rivals. Ford knew the Flex had qualities those vehicles didn't. It had character, bold styling, and a luxurious feel inside. But in an economy where people were losing jobs, homes, and savings, character wasn't enough. Shoppers prioritized affordability and fuel economy, not personality. The misfit identity. Still, Ford hoped the Flex would find its audience over time. They believed that word of mouth could slowly build momentum. After all, the Flex wasn't just another bland crossover, it was a statement car. It offered three-row seating without being a minivan, modern styling without being an SUV, and comfort that rivaled some luxury brands. And for the people who did buy it, loyalty was strong. Owners loved the spacious interior, the smooth ride, and the premium feel. Some buyers were drawn specifically because it was different. To them, the Flex was cool, precisely because it didn't look like everything else. But this small base of enthusiasts wasn't enough to offset the mainstream resistance. To most families, the Flex was a curiosity, a car they might admire from afar, but not one they were willing to put in their driveway. Timing is everything. History has shown that the Flex might have done much better if it had launched at a different time. Imagine the same car arriving a few years later, when the economy was stable, gas prices were lower, and consumers were ready to experiment with more stylish family vehicles. Instead, it was born into the worst possible climate, a financial storm, where buyers were cautious, conservative, and unwilling to gamble on something so unusual. This is what made the Flex's story so bittersweet. On one hand, it was a triumph of design and engineering, showing Ford's willingness to innovate. On the other, it was a victim of circumstance, released into a world that wasn't ready to embrace it. The legacy of the Flex. Though sales never matched Ford's hopes, the Flex left an impression. It showed that family cars didn't have to be boring, and it influenced later design directions in the crossover market. It also built a cult following that kept it alive for a full decade. Long after, many expected Ford to pull the plug. In the end, the Flex's launch serves as a reminder that in the auto industry, even the best ideas can fail if the timing isn't right. Success isn't only about building a good car, it's about launching the right car at the right moment. And for the Ford Flex in 2008, that moment simply never came. The design. From the beginning, the Flex was a polarizing machine. The shape, long, low, and boxy. At 201 inches, it was nearly as long as a Tahoe, but much lower. It looked like a stretched-out wagon, not a tall SUV. The roof, flat and available in a contrasting color. Buyers could pick white, black, or even silver roofs, giving the Flex a two-tone mini Range Rover vibe. The grooves, deep horizontal grooves, ran down the sides, almost like old wood panel station wagons. This was deliberate, a nod to Ford's long history with family wagons. The tailgate. Huge block letters spelled out FLEX across the back. It wasn't subtle. Ford wanted everyone to know exactly what you were driving. Inside, the Flex was even more interesting. Ford went all out to make it feel like the ultimate family lounge. 3 rows of seating, room for 7 passengers with optional second row. Captain's chairs that turned the middle row into a mini living room. Flat floor, easy to get in and out, thanks to its low ride height compared to SUVs. Cool features. Refrigerated console in the second row. Yes, a mini fridge. A giant glass roof with multiple skylights. And later, Ford's SYNC infotainment system with voice controls. Luxury touches. On the higher trims, leather seats, wood accents, and premium. Sony Audio made it feel more upscale than most crossovers. It was clear Ford wanted the Flex to be more than just transportation. This was supposed to be a family lifestyle vehicle, something cool enough for parents to enjoy and practical, enough for kids to survive long road trips. But under the hood, the Flex wasn't just about style, engines, and performance. When it launched in 2009, the Flex came with two choices. One, 3.5-liter V6, 262 horsepower, smooth, reliable, and enough for daily driving. Two, EcoBoost 3.5-liter twin-turbo V6, 355 horsepower. Introduced in 2010, this was the game changer. Suddenly, the Flex could rocket from 0 to 60 in about 6 seconds, shockingly. Quick for a 3-row family car. Front-wheel drive was standard, but all-wheel drive was available. With its long wheelbase and wide stance, the Flex rode more like a car than a truck, comfortable, quiet, and planted. Reviewers were impressed. Motor Trend called the EcoBoost Flex a sleeper hot, rod in a family suit. Parents who drove one often admitted, "This thing is way more fun than it looks." But here's the catch. For every person who fell in love with the quirky design and surprising performance, there were 10 others who said, "It's too weird. I'll just buy a Highlander." And in the brutally competitive crossover market, too weird usually means death sales struggles, a box too far. By 2010, the Flex had been on the market for a couple of years. Ford had hoped it would be. A fresh start, a car that could replace their dead minivan lineup and steal buyers away from the Honda Pilot and Toyota Highlander. But the numbers told a painful story. In its best year, 2009, the Flex sold just over 38,000 units. That wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great either. And after that, the numbers only went downhill. By 2011, sales dropped below 30,000. By 2014, they were under 25,000. To put that into perspective, Toyota Highlander was selling over 120,000 units a year. Honda Pilot was doing around 100,000 units. Even GM's big crossovers like the Chevy Traverse were consistently selling 80,000 plus units. The Flex, meanwhile, was stuck in the shadows. So, why didn't it work? Number one, the design was too polarizing. Most buyers shopping for a family car want something safe and familiar. The Flex was anything but. Its long, low stance and boxy shape made it stand out, but not always in a good way. Families would walk into dealerships, see the Flex next to an Explorer, and say, "Yeah, we'll take the SUV." Number two, the timing was terrible. Launching in 2008, right when the economy collapsed, was brutal. Families weren't spending big money on quirky new vehicles. They wanted affordable, fuel-efficient cars. The Flex was large, heavy, and not exactly cheap. Number three, Ford had no clear marketing message. What exactly was the Flex supposed to be? Was it a minivan replacement? A luxury crossover? A lifestyle car? Ford never nailed the pitch. Ads tried to show it as hip and stylish, but most families didn't buy it. Number four, gas prices hurt sales. Even though it wasn't as thirsty as a big SUV, the Flex still wasn't great on fuel. The EcoBoost version was powerful, but could easily dip into the teens, miles per gallon. When driven hard, buyers worried about running costs. In short, the Flex had an identity crisis. It wasn't a minivan, it wasn't an SUV, and it wasn't quite a wagon either. It lived in its own weird category, and most buyers didn't know what to do with it. But here's the funny thing. While the public shrugged, the people who did buy the Flex absolutely loved it. The cult following. Why some people loved it. Talk to any Ford Flex owner and you'll notice a pattern. They're not just satisfied, they're passionate. The Flex may have been a sales disappointment, but it built one of the strongest cults followings of any modern Ford vehicle. Number one, the perfect family road trip car. Owners will tell you, if you load up a Flex for a road trip, you'll never go back. The cabin was massive, with 3 real rows of adult-friendly seating. The flat floor made it easy to stretch out. The available refrigerator and giant sunroof turned long drives into adventures. And because it sat lower than an SUV, loading kids, strollers, and groceries was much easier. Families who bought one often kept it for 10+ years. Number 2, a hidden performance gem. Then there's the EcoBoost version, with 355 horsepower, all-wheel drive, and a 6-second 0 to 60 time. The Flex shocked people. From the outside, it looked like a box on wheels. But behind the wheel, it had surprising muscle. Car reviewers loved calling it a sleeper, something that could embarrass sports cars at a stoplight while carrying 3 kids and a dog in the back. Enthusiasts began modifying their EcoBoost Flexes, bigger turbos, custom tunes, exhaust, systems, turning them into true hot rods disguised as family wagons. Number 3, the unique style. Here's the thing about polarizing design. If you love it, you really love it. For some buyers, the Flex's boxy shape was the best part. It didn't blend in like a Highlander or Pilot. It stood out. It looked retro, modern, and different all at once. Some even compared it to high-end European wagons. Park a Flex with a black roof and chrome trim next to a Range Rover, and people sometimes did double take. Number 4, the loyal community. Over time, Flex owners formed online groups and clubs. They shared tips, customizations, and road trip stories. Many proudly said, "I'll never sell mine. Nothing else does what this car does." One quote from a Flex forum sums it up perfectly. "The Flex is weird, but it's our kind of weird. In many ways, the Flex became like the Pontiac Aztek or the Honda Element cars that were initially mocked but later found love from people who understood their quirks." The end, fading into the background. By the mid-2000s, the writing was on the wall. The Flex, despite its cult following, was never going to be a mainstream hit. Ford tried keeping it alive with small updates. In 2013, the Flex got a facelift, a smoother front grille, new wheels, better interior tech. But the changes weren't dramatic enough to draw in new buyers. Meanwhile, Ford's other crossovers were stealing the spotlight. The Ford Explorer came roaring back in 2011 with a sleek redesign. Families who once considered the Flex now chose the Explorer instead. The Edge and the smaller Escape were selling strong, and Ford was pouring resources into trucks like the F-150, which were far more profitable. In this crowded lineup, the Flex quietly slid into the background. By 2017, annual sales dipped below 22,000 units. For a company the size of Ford, those numbers were hard to justify. Still, Ford kept it in production longer than many expected. Why? Because the people who did buy it absolutely loved it. Dealers knew that Flex customers were some of the happiest, most loyal owners Ford had. Even if it wasn't a sales star, it filled a unique niche. But eventually, reality caught up. In October 2019, Ford officially announced the end. The last Ford Flex rolled off the assembly line in Ontario, Canada in November 2019. And just like that, after 11 years on the market, the box on wheels was gone. There was no big farewell commercial, no collector's edition. The Flex just quietly disappeared, much like it had lived its life, loved by a few, ignored by many. The legacy, why did Ford make this? So now we come back to the big question. Why did Ford make the Flex? At first glance, it seems like a failure. Sales were poor, the public never fully embraced it. And today, the Flex is mostly remembered as an oddball experiment. But look closer, and the story makes more sense. Number 1, a bold minivan replacement. The Flex was Ford's way of saying, we're done with minivans. Instead of another sliding dash, door box like the Windstar or Freestar, they built something stylish, modern, and different. They wanted to change how people thought about family cars. In that sense, the Flex succeeded. It wasn't just transportation, it had personality. Number 2, ahead of its time. When the Flex launched in 2008, buyers weren't ready for it. But fast forward to today, and the automotive world looks different. Boxy, retro-inspired SUVs like the Kia Telluride and Hyundai Palisade are bestsellers. Buyers now want bold shapes and big interiors. If the Flex had launched 10 years later, it might have been a hit. Number 3. Proof of Ford's willingness to take risks. Ford is often seen as a conservative car maker, but the Flex proved otherwise. It was a risk. A car that didn't fit neatly into any category, and while it didn't pay off financially, it showed that Ford was willing to try new ideas. Number 4. A cult classic that refuses to die. Even today, the Flex has a loyal fan base. Used models are still in demand. Families hunt for well-kept examples because, frankly, nothing else is quite like it. Ask a Flex owner why they love it, and you'll hear things like, "It's the best road trip car we've ever owned. It's ugly, but it's our ugly. It does everything we need, and it still turns heads." The Flex may not have changed the world, but it changed the lives of the people who drove it. The strange Ford that made sense. The Ford Flex is one of those rare cars that doesn't just fade into traffic. Even years after its discontinuation, spotting one on the road still makes people smile, or at least do a double. Take not because it was perfect, and certainly not because it sold in huge numbers, but because it dared to be unapologetically different. From its very beginning, the Flex was designed as an answer to a problem: the slow death of the minivan. By the mid-2000s, families had grown tired of sliding doors, boxy shapes, and the uncool stigma attached to minivans. At the same time, SUVs were booming, but most were heavy, fuel-thirsty, and not always practical for suburban parents who simply needed space and comfort. Ford believed there was room for something new, something that could combine the practicality of a minivan with the style and comfort of a modern crossover. The solution was the Flex. Long, low, and unmistakably boxy, it looked like nothing else on the market when it debuted in 2008. Some called it a retro wagon, others compared it to European luxury estates, and a few even saw it as a spiritual successor to the classic station wagon. Whatever the description, one thing was clear: the Flex had its own identity. It wasn't trying to copy anything else, it was simply itself, but timing is everything in the auto industry, and the Flex had the worst possible luck. Its launch coincided with the global financial crisis. Families were cutting back on spending, gas prices were spiking, and sales of big vehicles plummeted across the board. Shoppers who might have considered the Flex under normal circumstances stuck with cheaper, smaller, more fuel-efficient cars. As a result, sales lagged from the very beginning. Despite this rocky start, the Flex built a loyal following. Owners loved it for its roomy interior, comfortable ride, and unexpected touches of luxury. The boxy shape wasn't just for looks. It made the cabin incredibly spacious, with 3 usable rows of seating and a flat roofline that gave passengers more headroom than almost any competitor. Families discovered that it was one of the best road trip vehicles Ford had ever made. With available all-wheel drive and, later, the powerful EcoBoost V6 engine, the Flex also proved surprisingly capable. Still, it never managed to capture the mainstream market. Many buyers couldn't get past the unusual styling. For every person who loved its bold design, there were 2 more who wanted something safer, something that looked like every other crossover on the lot. And so, year after year, Flex sales remained modest compared to heavy hitters like the Toyota Highlander, Honda Pilot, or even Ford's own Explorer. The Flex was always a niche player. Yet this niche status gave it a strange kind of charm. Unlike the mass-market SUVs that blended into every driveway, the Flex stood out. It appealed to people who didn't mind being different, who liked the idea of driving something unique. Celebrities, musicians, and even some luxury buyers were drawn to it precisely because it didn't look like anything else. For them, the Flex was cool in its weirdness. By the time Ford finally pulled the plug in 2019, the Flex had been in production for over a decade. It never became a sales success, but it also never disappeared from Ford's lineup as quickly as some critics predicted. That endurance says something. Despite its struggles, the Flex had enough of an audience to keep it alive longer than anyone expected, and in many ways, its legacy is larger than its sales numbers. The Flex proved that there is value in taking risks, in building a car that doesn't fit neatly into categories. It wasn't a minivan, it wasn't an SUV, and it wasn't just another crossover, it was all three at once, wrapped in a design that refused to blend in. So why did Ford make the Flex? Because they wanted to offer families something different, something bold, something memorable. And in that mission, the Flex absolutely succeeded. Today, when people look back at the Ford Flex, they don't see a failure. They see a misfit, a car that refused to conform, and one that quietly carved out its own space in automotive history. It may not have sold in huge numbers, but it made a lasting impression. And sometimes, as the Flex proved, being strange is the only way to make sense. If you enjoyed this incredible story, don't forget to hit the like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more epic automotive adventures. Your support keeps these stories alive.